The Los Angeles Rams have had 4 different helmet designs since the beginning of the Super Bowl era. They were the first team to put a logo on the side of the helmet, and they made a change that, you know, it warms my cockles, Steve, because they made the right decision when they brought back their white horns. We'll get into that and a bunch of little tweaks they've made along the way, so stay tuned. Steve, what are our thoughts on the Rams?
Well, the helmets in general?
Sure.
Well, I'll jump way ahead and say I think they're the only team that used to have the most literal and perfect logo that looked exactly like a ram when they were all lined up, you know, snapping the ball, and then now they've changed it. It's too modern, doesn't look like a ram anymore. Done.
Okay, that's a lot to take in. Let's unpack that a little bit, but first, let's do the helmets one at a time.
Yes.
So 1964 through 1972, they had a dark navy helmet with a white ram and a gray face mask. Not a fan of the gray face mask. I get it, back then that's what they were all doing. The ram logo originally was painted on to the shells. Now it's decals, but fascinating that they've made it, you know, decades by just painting it on.
It really is incredible, and you hinted towards it in the beginning of the episode here. 1947, a little pre-Super Bowl, but the first team ever to put a logo on there is pretty cool. And you're right. I mean, it's kind of interesting, their progression.
And back then it was painted on leather.
Yeah.
So imagine how that looked after a few games.
Brutal.
All cracking off and everything. In 1973, they switched, they got rid of the white horn, they put on a yellow horn, and that yellow was, you could call it athletic gold. We call it Green Bay gold. It's that bright, deep yellow that we see, you know, on the Packers and other teams.
And with those yellow horns, they made them look even more realistic by jutting them out a little bit more and having them come to a bigger swirl than the white ones did, which I think is really cool.
It is. One thing that they did in 1981 is they switched to a dark navy face mask. So I think that that's a good look, but they did something which I think is kind of weird when they did that switch, is all of a sudden the beginning of the ram horn did not come all the way down.
It just makes no sense.
So in 2000, a lot of things changed. See, this was the greatest show on turf.
That's what they said.
If you remember back in those days, they moved to St. Louis. They changed the ram color from yellow to gold. They still had the navy helmet. They still had the navy face mask, and they were in the Super Bowl. They won that Super Bowl, right?
Yeah, and the horn goes all the way down to the front of the helmet. Back to normal.
Hey, good.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all I can say. Let's keep it that way. So in 2016, they moved to LA. They kept the gold horns, and then in that year, they sprinkled in a couple of games. They switched it to a white horn with a gray face mask. And then in 2017, they changed the face mask from gray to white. A very gradual change, I think. They went all in on the white on white, which I think is the cleanest look. That navy helmet, white horn, white face mask.
And what I really liked about that look was they dropped just the Rams. They spelt out Los Angeles across the back with 3D bumpers. The front, they went with the logo on the helmet. Easily is one of the best looks that they ever had.
I love it. I'm gonna, spoil it early in this one. That's my favorite design for the Rams. I think it's a super clean look. The helmet is super clean. Interestingly, they wore that helmet with jerseys that still had gold numbers, and
that was weird. Yeah.
So now we come to the current form of their existence, which is in 2020, SoFi opens up, new stadium, completely new look. They switch to this Ram royal blue helmet, which is a pretty cool paint color on here. It's got like a pearl in it. It looks great in person. That kind of doesn't do it injustice on camera.
Totally.
And they switched their yellow. So no longer do we have that Green Bay gold or athletic yellow. Now it's a lighter yellow that they call soul yellow, which I guess makes a little bit of sense. Southern California, it's bright and sunny. It does look a little bit more like a sunburst, I guess, built into a ram horn. There was a lot of controversy over this design change when it rolled out. I kind of like it, personally.
I very much like the color scheme, and I very much appreciate the blue paint job, but it's not a ram. It's not a ram horn. It looks like a poor job of like an aperture or some iris from like 1996.
Well, you're a photographer, so maybe that's That's what you see.
Right. So this one was all about the Rams. If the Rams were not your team, don't worry about it. We did all other 31 NFL teams. Be sure to check out the playlist. And please let us know which of these is your favorite Rams design.